Thank you all for coming. I know a lot of you have to come because it's a class, right? You signed up for one unit? All right, so you're stuck here. Stuck with me for the next 2 hours. This is a two-hour class, right? Good, good. Yeah, as Louise said, I was a grad student here a long time ago, back when the Earth's crust was still cooling, I think. And I had a reputation then. People would hear me talk, and they'd say, Jeff is a warm speaker. And what I found out later is what they meant by warm speaker is that I was not too hot. And then some people would hear me talk, and they say, hey, Jeff is a model speaker. And what I realized later, by model speaker, they thought I was a cheap imitation of the real thing. But here I am, and you're stuck with me for the next 2 hours. We are talking about how the future of water is closer and better than you think, right? Yeah? I hear some people snickering there, laughing, like they're skeptical. Well, let's find out. Let's take a quick look. First of all, how sustainable is today's approach to water? We've got this sustainability thing pretty dialed, right? It's totally sustainable, right? I see heads shaking. No, what do you mean? Well, let's take a quick look. First of all, for something to be sustainable, it's got to cover the trifecta of sustainability, the 3 pillars. To be sustainable, it's got to be good for people, planet, and prosperity. And some people don't like the 3 Ps of sustainability. They prefer the 3 Es. To be sustainable, something's got to be good for equity, ecology, and economics. And still others prefer the 3 Cs of sustainability. It's got to be good for communities, conservation, and commerce. I don't care what letter of the alphabet, what letters you use. It could be P, D, Q, X, Y, Z. For it to be sustainable, it's got to cover all 3 pillars. So let's take a look at our current approach to water in that light. First, how good is it for people? Take a look at these people gathered around a dry well, desperate to get water. Does that look good for people? How about this? Cape Town running out of water. The world's first major metropolitan area, almost done with its water supply. Good for people? How about the map of water stress around the world? This is projections for 2040. You can see the ones in red are the ones that are going to experience extreme water scarcity. Yellow is moderate scarcity. Have you lived in any of these countries that are red or yellow or traveled to them? Raise your hand. This is coming soon to your country. How about this? We have people protesting large hydroelectric dams, marching in the streets to keep these dams out that displace communities. Good for people? How about my home state, California, where we have mandatory water restrictions, what you can and can't do with your water. There's a new profession. People can grow up to be a water cop and patrol the neighborhoods, keeping track who's using water. We have disrupted supplies during natural disasters. For example, Hurricane Maria, 2017, knocked out 1/3 of the Puerto Ricans' water supply. 1/3 of Puerto Ricans without water. It got so bad they were drinking water from a local hazardous waste dump, a Superfund site. That's how desperate they were. Water is being used as a weapon of war increasingly. Rebels threatened to blow up the Mosul Dam in Iraq, sending a wall of water to flood downstream cities. It's a tool for terrorists as well. Think about the Paris negotiations for the climate change agreement in Paris. When these heads of state have gathered there, the terrorists were threatening to put the contaminants into the water supply, and those pumps and pipes in Paris would do the rest and contaminate the water and poison over 180 heads of state, thanks to the centralized distribution system. Even this mess in Syria, there's pretty good evidence that it started with a lack of water. A prolonged drought caused the crops to dry up. Farmers can no longer survive in the rural areas. They migrate to the urban areas where they're unemployed. Discontent grows. Next thing you know, they have a revolution. So is our current approach good for people, given all these concerns? Maybe not. Well, at least it's good for the planet then. Let's take a look at that. Water today, with our pumps and pipes and distance, has a huge ecological footprint. We pump water hundreds of kilometers up and over mountains to provide people with it. And all of this takes a lot of energy with a large ecological footprint for habitat destruction as well as carbon emissions. Desalination plants, there are thousands of these around the world right now, are especially bad. They use so much energy. We also have problems with our point source pollution. Our concentrated systems of water concentrate the pollution. So I question if it's so good for the planet. Well, so far we're 0 for 2. Maybe it's good for prosperity. Let's check. Unfortunately, we have aging infrastructure with our pipes. Here in the United States, for example, this is what a typical water pipe looks like that's buried underground. They're rusting out. They were put in decades ago, and they've reached the end of their useful life. and we need to replace these. And what's happening is they're leaking. These underground water pipes are rusting through. This is actually good news. This is a picture from Los Angeles, and this is very encouraging because the pipe happened to conveniently have the leak on the top side of the pipe, so the water shot up through the road, and we could see it and fix it. But most of the leaks go sideways or downward, and we don't even know that we're losing 20, 30, even 40% of our water quietly disappearing into the ground because of this aging infrastructure. And how much is it going to cost to fix all of this? Estimates for the United States are $1 trillion to fix this infrastructure. Who's going to pay for this $1 trillion, folks? That's right, Mexico. Mexico is going to pay for it. Thank you, Lasoy. Boom. No, Mexico is not going to pay for it. Jim, I'm sorry. You're going to pay for it. And we see this in the rising prices. If you think about the cost of things going up over the years, for example, the price of postage, electricity, natural gas, inflation, the consumer price index, it all goes up over time, but nothing goes up as fast as water and sewage. Oh, and people are getting mad about this. The rising water prices, you can see the Irish protesting. You can see the signs here. It's all about say no to water charges. And let's go to, this is Peru. You can see in Cochabamba, Ayacucho, and other places, people are protesting the rising water prices. And so I question whether it's so good for prosperity. It's not very good for people, planet, or prosperity. Well, let's take a time out and just go back to that title. Can we all agree with this title now, this statement? Do you all agree that the future of water is closer and better than you think? How many of you agree with it? Raise your hand. Got one, 1.5. All right, 1.5 out of, at last count, 64 people. Well, maybe we should just stop here, since nobody's really convinced yet that the future of water is closer and better than you think. Bear with me. Let's see what we can do with this topic. How can we fix this mess? Our current approach is not so good for people, planet, or prosperity, so what are we going to do? Well, I wasn't concerned about this at all. I was working on other things, and then suddenly I picked up the local newspaper in Monterey County, California, where I live, and this is the headline I saw. High water bills still popping up, and this Carmel Woods couple, local community, got a monthly water bill that was $5,526. And this was an elderly couple in their 90s on a fixed income, and they get the water bill for over $5,000. And of course they can't pay that. And I thought, all right, this is madness. Game on, I'm in. Let's see what we can do to try to fix this. And so I started looking for a massive new water source. Where can we find abundant, clean water? I looked at the usual places like desal, but that's not going to work for the reasons I discussed. I looked at the reservoirs, but they're drying up in California and beyond. I looked at the rivers, but they're drying up. I looked at the snowpack in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California and around the world, but the glaciers are melting and the snow is less and less. I even looked at groundwater, the aquifers, but they're becoming depleted and contaminated. I thought, wow, where can we possibly find a brand new water source? Any ideas? The moon, Mars, yeah, it might be water on Mars. It's going to take a while, yeah. Well, I thought about it, and then I realized, it hit me, where we're going to find the massive new water source. And that new water source, the biggest source of all, is the air around us. The sky will be our water source. It's like an ocean of water. It's invisible, but the sky around us is loaded with trillions and trillions of gallons of water. And I think it might be the future supply for us. And it's all places, all times, and it's free. Let's take a look. So far, the main point I've made today is that our current approach, this centralized distribution model with pumps and pipes, is pretty unsustainable. The second point I'm going to make right now is that a decentralized, distributed, on-site water revolution is underway. And let me explain what I mean by this. When it comes to producing water on-site from the sky, there are 3 technologies: rainwater harvesting, fog and dew collection, and atmospheric water generators. And then once you harvest water from the sky, you keep it there and reuse it. You can do gray water recycling and black water recycling. Gray water is from water that's not very dirty, for example, your laundry water. But black water is water that has bacteria in it and other things that are nastier that require a higher level of cleanup, for example, kitchen sinks and toilets. Let's go through each of these 5 in turn. First of all, rainwater harvesting has been around for at least 2,000 years. It's nothing new. People are doing this around the world. And you can have residential systems. You can even bury the tanks underground so they're out of sight if you want. Or you can have large ones. This is actually where I live in Monterey, a 20,000-gallon tank under site, so buried underground. So it can be residential or larger scale. For fog and dew collection, this is an example in Chile. You just put, this looks like volleyball nets. And when the fog comes in off the ocean, the droplets get caught in the net, in the mesh, and they gravity feed down, form bigger droplets, and then they fill up containers, and in this case, they supply a village at the base of the mountains with abundant water from the fog. In California, we have fog in the summer where I live. In the summer is when we're driest. We have the serious water issues during the summer months while we're waiting for the rains to come. In the fall, Mother Nature brings in abundant fog at that exact time in San Francisco, Santa Cruz, and San Diego, and well, actually, in Los Angeles, I think that's fog. I'm pretty sure that's fog, but I'm not. It might be some air pollution. So Mother Nature is trying to give us this gift. Oh, you need water? Here, I'm going to give you free water, trillions of gallons, to everybody for free where you need it most and when you need it most. And we have been saying, no, we don't want your gift. Sorry. But I think that's about to change. There are also new systems for agriculture. For example, this lettuce. The dew comes down at night. When the air cools, the droplets form and gravity feed down to the base of the plant. Same thing with these wine grapes. Harvesting that overnight dew to keep the crops growing. There are all kinds of new ones being developed. This is kind of a mesh model system being designed for the Sahel. Here's another one in the Sahel that just harvest water from the sky. One of my favorite ones that's now being deployed in several countries is the water seer. Maybe you've heard of this one. So this costs about $130, and the wind blows the turbine, which captures air, and it brings it down into the ground. The ground is cooler, and so the water condenses, and the droplets form and fill up a reservoir that you can pump the water out the next day. So there's one example. One of my favorite technologies that's out there is atmospheric water generators. Let's take a look at those. These are like dehumidifiers. They pull water out of the air. Some of them come in small sizes, like a water cooler in an office. And they pull water from the air and then produce filtered, pure, potable drinking water. Some of them are large scale for industrial purposes. And these are becoming increasingly common. For example, they're being used for disaster relief and military operations now. It used to be if there's a disaster overseas, we're going to fly in water. Or for soldiers who are serving overseas in a conflict zone, we send pallets of bottled water in cargo planes over there. So each soldier gets the required amount of liters of water per day. It's an ecological nightmare to do this, as well as a financial burden. Instead, same thing with disaster relief. But where things are going now is people are using these on-site water generators. For example, FEMA, the Federal Emergency and Management Authority, produces water on site at disaster locations. U.S. military are now using these. You just have an atmospheric water in the back of a truck, and you can create water on site. The military likes to paint things camo, so they paint theirs camouflage. Take a look at this one. What kind of background do you see there? What kind of ecosystem is this sitting in? It's a desert, exactly. And I put that picture in there just to remind you that you can pull water from thin air efficiently, effectively, affordably, even in a desert. It takes more energy to do so, but in a desert you have abundant solar power, so they'll have an array of solar panels to power this device. Let me show you one that I'm especially excited about.
So when you have source, you own the water you drink, just like you own the air that you breathe, and you know exactly where it came from. When you absorb it in the way that source does water from the atmosphere, it's pure water, which isn't ideal for taste or health. And so what we do is we add calcium and magnesium passively inside the system to make it great tasting.
I want to pause that right there. The aim is to democratize. The aim is to democratize access to water. The idea that water should be abundant and affordable for everyone, not just the rich people. No matter where you are, you should be able to get water affordably and abundantly from the sky. Democratize it. This is a new type of water bottle called Fontus. Does anybody have a water bottle? Anybody? Hold up a water bottle. Anybody? Can I see this? Did you fill this up this morning? Yeah. Are you likely to fill it up later today? Yeah. In the future, you won't be filling this up. It'll just be filling up during the day. While you're walking around class to class, it'll just automatically fill up from the sky. Here's a thrilling one. There's a water abundance XPrize competition that recently completed. The challenge was come up with a way to harvest water from thin air in an energy-efficient way. I'll show you, this will be the last video. But I want you to meet the winners of this recent XPrize competition. So there were strings attached to this. And the string was, in order to get the $1.75 million, XPrize, you have to meet 3 criteria. You have to pull water from thin air, but you have to get 2,000 liters of water per day. That's a lot of water. And second, you have to do it at a combined total cost of no more than 2 cents per liter. So it has to be affordable, abundant and affordable, and it has to be sustainable. You have to use 100% renewable energy. That's the challenge. Go. And nearly 100 teams from around the world competed for the XPrize, for the Water Abundance XPrize, to see who could do this. And I'll just introduce you to the winner. Let's just finish
the Water Abundance XPrize is the concept of essentially generating water out of thin air. At this stage of the game, we're down to 2 of the 5 finalist teams.
This week, we're in Berkeley, California, where we're evaluating the technology of SkyWater SkySource.
The beauty of our system is the integration between a standalone energy system and a standalone water system to make 2,000 liters of water from air using 100% renewable energy at less than 2 cents per liter.
These atmospheric water generation technologies serve the needs for water insecure regions, especially after disasters.
Whether it's Cape Town running out of water or Flint, this is happening more and more.
It has been pretty intense, but it's really exciting for me to see water come out of our system because this is connected to real lives in the world.
We're here on the Big Island of Hawaii today where we've kicked off testing with Team JMCC Wing.
Use the wind to generate electricity and water. So basically, you can drop a container like this in the middle of nowhere, have water and electricity without any infrastructure.
This is always my favorite part of being an XPrize competition is to actually be here on the ground and seeing the team on their test site and all this work they've been putting in over the last year and a half is always super fulfilling.
It's one of the great things about the XPrize is inspiring and motivating these teams to come together and give it a try.
Now we've got 2 teams in the competition and they have a shot at winning $1.5 million, but more importantly, solving the issue of water scarcity.
So this is the winning team. And the winning team is the Sky Souls Skywater Alliance.
This XPrize, looking at the atmosphere as a way to harness water, has profound effects in affecting billions of people in the future that are going to face water scarcity.
So that's the first 3 parts. How do you get water from the sky? And you've seen some incredible examples of how that's not some future sci-fi technology. It is happening right now on an affordable, sustainable basis. Once you have the water, you want to recycle it with gray water recycling or black water recycling. Gray water recycling, again, is from your laundry, showers, and bathtubs. It's not particularly dirty. It's pretty easy to clean up. And you can have small units in your house, for example, this one, or you can have large industrial units, for example, at a hotel or on a campus like this. People are pairing this with solar. If you're going solar, if your family adds some panels to power your house with solar, just go ahead and add a couple panels to power your gray water recycling machine. Suddenly you're off the grid for electricity and water at the same time. Black water recycling is water that's dirtier. It's from your toilets and kitchen sinks. Again, we have small units for households and larger ones for industrial purposes. Bill Gates from the Gates Foundation is especially into this, pushing the edge on technology. I like this headline, Bill Gates sponsors a machine that turns poop into drinking water. Bill Gates is drinking toilet water here. Actually, 10 minutes prior, it was toilet water, raw sewage. And after 10 minutes, it is completely drinkable. Where I'm from, in California, we have a brand new tall skyscraper, just opened last year. It's the Salesforce Tower. And what I love about the new Salesforce Tower in the San Francisco skyline is it includes a 30,000 gallon a day black water recycling system. So everybody in this huge building who's flushing toilets and washing dishes and so on, the water goes down to a black water recycling machine and gets reused the next day. So these are the 5 technologies. 3 to get it out of the air, and then 2 to keep reusing it. And I wonder if this could be more sustainable, this on-site distributed model. Is it good for people? Well, it's abundant. There's less scarcity. And there's equitable access everywhere, even in remote corners of the earth. In a desert, can now get water. And there's less conflict, potentially, arguing over limited water supplies. Is it good for the planet? Well, we have fewer pipes and pumps and all that energy and carbon emissions to move water up and down over mountains to get it to people. Instead, it's coming from your roof a few meters. And third, prosperity. How's the money look? Well, it's actually getting increasingly affordable. And you'll be at that chart I showed, that graph where water prices keep going up and up and up and people are protesting in the streets about it. Their water is going to level off. The price will no longer keep going up. So far, we've talked about this decentralized distributed model that's underway and probably more sustainable. At this point, I want to ask if it's perhaps inevitable. No matter what we decide to do, this might be coming anyway. Let's talk about that. I think it's part of a larger trend that your generation is experiencing. Think about telecommunications. When I was a kid, we used to get our phones over these things. Do you recognize what these are? Anybody? Yeah? And now, where do we get our telecommunications? We get it invisibly from the sky. Same thing with electricity. I used to get my electricity from this power plant in California, and now I get my electricity invisibly from the sky. And now with water. Right now we get water from these centralized systems of dams and aquifers and so on. Where am I going to get my water in the future? Invisibly from the sky. We've seen this movie before, twice in fact, with major other utilities. And it makes me wonder about the big picture. If I look back on the whole span of human existence, I think water's gone through 3 stages. I call stage 1 the caveman stage. I call it go get it, where if you want water, you got to go to a lake or a stream and find it and drink it. And then stage 2 was the modern era, which we're in right now. I call it bring it back, including the Roman aqueducts till today. If you want water, you go get it in the Sierra Nevada mountains, the snowpack, or wherever, and you bring it back to New York City. New York City goes to the Catskills, gets their water, and brings it to New York City. But the future, I'm calling let it come. Instead of going to get it or bringing it back, you just let the water come to you at your property. And I think we've seen this before. In fact, I think we just saw it with movies. Stage 1, go get it. Movie theaters are closing down in the United States and many parts of the world. And then we entered stage 2, bring it back. If you want to watch a movie, instead of going to the local movie theater as the only option, you go to something like, have you heard of Blockbuster? Yeah? It used to be the thing. You'd go, you'd rent something called a DVD. Does that ring a bell? DVD? Yeah, you get a DVD and you take it home. You bring it back to your house. Bring it back and you have like 3 days to watch the movie and then return it, right? And now we're in stage 3 for movies. Let it come. Let me just ask you, what's about to show up in this corner? What image? Exactly. You guys are good. You guys are good. In fact, you're so good, I'm going to give you a pop quiz right now. Are you ready? Your grade today depends on this pop quiz. All right? I'm calling it the decentralization pop quiz. We've seen this movie in transportation. It used to be if you wanted to get a ride across town, you'd call a taxi, like a yellow cab or a red cab, through some centralized system, dispatcher. What's the new decentralized version of that transportation? Uber. Exactly. 1 for 1. Next one. Used to be for lodging. If you want to stay in a hotel somewhere in a new city that you're visiting, you call one of these national chains and you make a reservation through their central booking system. Now what's the decentralized version of that? Nice and loud. Very good. You're 2 for 2. All right. Let's do one more. Let's do money, currency. Around the world, people use these currencies, and on there somewhere it says who issued. It's the Central Bank of Zimbabwe, the Central Bank of England. What's the new decentralized model of that? Nice and loud. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Do you guys see this trend? This is one of the great things, one of the great transformations of your generation. It's happening right now, right in front of our very eyes. And it's happening in water, too. This reminds me of one of my favorite books by Thomas Friedman, New York Times columnist, Pulitzer Prize winner. He came out with a great book called The World is Flat. And I would say, when you fast forward to today, it's not only flat, but it's getting flatter every minute, including water. All right, so far we've talked about this decentralized distributed on-site water revolution. It's underway, more sustainable, perhaps inevitable, because it's happening all around us. It's time for a reality check. You've already got these 5 technologies at your house, right? Can I just confirm that everybody's got these? You do, right? You've got the gray water recycling, black water recycling, rainwater harvesting, atmospheric water generators. You got them, right? What? Some of these have been around for 2,000 years. You don't have these yet? Well, that brings us to the last part of the talk. We have some obstacles to overcome. If this is such a great idea, then why isn't everybody doing it? Why don't any of you have these things? And I want to talk about how we're trying to overcome those barriers with 3 examples from my grad students in Monterey. All right, well, let me just ask, why aren't you using these things? Why don't you have these technologies at your house? They're available today. Anybody?
Some of it is regulatory. The municipalities don't recognize black water recycling yet.
Okay, some of the regulations don't allow it. Why else don't? Has that kept you from having these, the regulations? What other factors?
Don't even know about them.
Lack of knowledge that these exist? What else?
Are they expensive?
Expense, the cost, exactly. What else? Some vested interests? Maybe the current water providers are trying to shut these down, maybe. All right. Well, you've got a lot of reasons why you don't have these yet, even though they're widely available. I found that the reasons tend to fall into two main things. It has to do with complexity and cost. If you're like this gentleman, you're not sure what's the best system for your property, and you're not sure the cost, how long to pay back. If you go solar, you'll break even and pay for those panels after anywhere from 5 to 7 to 10 years, depending on where you are. After that, you've got free electricity forever. But what's the payback period for these on-site water production technologies? And what if it breaks? Do you know how to fix one of those black water recycling machines? It's a hassle, and it's complex. Well, I'll tell you what. For you guys, as a Cornell alumnus, I'm going to make you guys a special offer right now. One of my grad students and I are going to make you an offer. We will come to your property or your family's property, wherever it is, and we'll design one of these systems for you. Maybe it's some rainwater harvesting mixed with some gray water recycling. We'll design one that fits your property perfectly, okay? And then we'll get the permits from the regulatory bodies, the county, the city. We'll stand in line, fill out the forms, in triplicate, pay the fee. We'll get the permit to install it at your property. While we're paying for things, we're just going to buy the whole technology for you. Let's say it's, yeah, totally. Yeah, let's say it's, I don't know, rainwater harvesting with gray water recycling. Let's say it's $40,000. It's on us. You don't pay a dime. And then while we're paying for things, we'll also give you free maintenance for 20 years. We'll give you free repairs for 20 years. If your system breaks in year 17, we'll try to fix it, and if we can't fix it, we'll replace it for free. We'll provide 24/7 monitoring with an app on your phone so you can keep track how much water you're saving and how much money you're saving. And we guarantee you one more thing. We will lower your water bill by at least 25 to 75% net. Would any of you like one of these? Anybody want to take us up on this offer? Okay, all right, okay. Well, we created a company that offered, sure. We created a company that offered exactly this. And we entered it into a business plan competition. And we thought the judges, who are 18 venture capitalists, would say, you guys are idiots. Instead, the venture capitalist judges gave us first prize. They gave us the $50,000 Innovator of the Year award. And they said, congratulations, you've come up with a market-based solution to California's water crisis and beyond. And we're like, oh, no. Now we got to go do this. We just made this up, And they're like, no, this is big. You've got it. You figured it out. And we're like, oh, man. Now we got to go do it. So we formed a company called Water City. And Water City is on a mission to make water conservation easy and profitable for the public. And the way we do this is we come to your property and we design a water-producing system at your property, and then we sell the water to you for less than what you pay to the utility. And if that model sounds familiar, it's because we borrowed it from a company called Solar City. If you've heard of Elon Musk, any Solar City customers here? Have you heard of Solar City? Not so big out here. It's especially large in the West. They transformed the solar industry with a new business model. Instead of paying $15,000 or $20,000 for solar panels, which is a barrier for a lot of people getting off the grid for electricity, my family and millions of others can now, with these new models, go solar for nothing. What happens, this is my house here in California. You've got the Solar City truck here delivering my panels. Guys are up on the roof measuring and starting to install the panels. And the way it works is I sign a 20-year power purchase agreement. They put the panels on my roof, they own them, and they sell me the electricity from their panels on my roof for less than what I pay our utility. And they lock me in at that low price for 20 years. So while my neighbor's electricity prices go up, mine stay flat. And I'm off the grid for electricity with no cost. Instead of a 7 to 10 year payback period for my $15,000, $20,000 worth of panels, it's immediate because I didn't buy them. And so we took that model and we applied it to water. We started testing it in Monterey at businesses, residentials, government facilities, a local school like Seaside High School that has to water the football field and water the baseball field and so on. We started modeling this to see if the business model that made it possible for millions of middle-class families to go solar for nothing could help people get off the grid for water as well. Let me give you an example. This is a downtown Monterey hotel with 300 rooms. We crunched the numbers for this one, looked at their water bills. They use 15 million gallons a year at this 300-room hotel. Their water bill is $337,000 a year. Water price increases. They had bills going back 20 years. We could track those. Their water prices go up 14% a year since the year 2000. But we assumed for our model just 5%. We designed a system for them, a gray water recycling system that would just clean up the water from their laundry in particular. We crunched the numbers for this hotel by using our gray water recycling system and letting us clean up their water overnight and sell it back to them for a fraction of the price that they pay the utility. And on this 20-year contract, they would save 96 million gallons and $2.1 million. They were very interested in this. Our company, meanwhile, over the 20 years, we would make $1.4 million with a 77% gross profit margin. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, oh no, those 18 venture capitalists are right. This is going to work. This is really going to work. And so we started moving. We thought, maybe this is going to cover the trifecta. Maybe if we could do this and help millions of people get off the grid for water, it'll be good for people, because our customers are now saving millions of dollars off their water bills, and they're insulated from these price hikes. Maybe it'll be good for the planet, because now they're recycling millions of gallons of water. I see there's a recycle bin in the back. Right now, you guys recycle cans and bottles and paper, right? Do you recycle your water? No. But I guarantee you, 20 years from now, you'll look back on today when you were Cornell students, and you'll say, and your kids or your grandkids are going to say, is it true that back in 2019 you used a gallon of water just once and then throw it away, Dad, Mom? And you'll be like, yeah, crazy. Just like when I was a kid, we'd use a can or a bottle once or a piece of paper and throw it away, and it seems insane now. That'll be you in the future for looking back on how you use water today. And prosperity, our customers, we've signed contracts with customers that are worth millions of dollars in revenue. Good for people, planet, and prosperity, potentially. I have 3 other graduate students working on another project, the fog log. We developed this technology. It's a small device that, it's a prototype. It's got a solar panel on the top that charges a battery. And then you set it on your patio, your back deck, whatever. When the fog rolls in, or at night when the heavy moisture in the air, a sensor recognizes that, turns on the fan, and pulls the water into the fog log, and we capture the droplets, and we gravity feed the water down through a tube, and you can fill up a container overnight. That's just a small-scale model to work out the kinks, because where we're going is larger models here that could fit under the eaves. This is my house again. I've got my Solar City panels there, a fog log underneath it. The idea is that every building under the eaves, hidden, would be rimmed with these fog logs. At night, in California and other coastal areas especially, any place with fog, those things will sense it with their solar power, and they will capture that fog and fill up containers overnight with an app to track it. Another student of mine is doing rain returns. This is rainwater harvesting. It's a financing play for this. If you want to harvest rainwater and you don't have $15,000 to buy a system for your house, we'll give you a loan for this. And our idea is that financing is often the key to massive adoption. When the first cars came out by Henry Ford, very few people could afford them, just the rich people. And then they came up with something called a car loan, an auto loan, and adoption went like this. Same thing with homes. Very few people could afford to buy a home. They came up with something called a mortgage or a home loan, and then home ownership skyrocketed. Same thing with college education. Very few people could afford to go to college. They came up with something called a student loan, and suddenly people are going to college by the millions. What if rainwater harvesting is the same way? People are not harvesting rainwater, but what if we give them a loan? We finance that for them over 10, 15 years. Could adoption skyrocket as well? So there you have 3 examples from Monterey. I'm going to head for the finish line here because we're about out of time. But I just want to remind you of one of my favorite quotes. John Stuart Mill said that every great movement must experience 3 stages: ridicule, discussion, and adoption. And I think you've seen this ridicule stage before, and we might even be in it with this on-site water thing. I'm reminded of this picture. See what this gentleman is holding right here? If I were to offer you one of these, there's new technology. We're calling it a cell phone. And it weighs about 3 pounds. And you can only talk to, it only does one thing, and that's talk to people. You can talk. The quality of the call is very bad, and there's very few other people you could even talk to because there aren't very many of these phones out there. And I'll tell you what, you can have it for $4,000. I hear you laughing. Is that ridiculous? Of course you wouldn't buy one of these. That was 1983. How many of you now use a cell phone? Raise your hand. everywhere. And folks, that's where we are with harvesting water from the sky. You should laugh at it right now. You should ridicule it as if you're looking at a 1983 cell phone. Let's go back to the title, this preposterous title that the future of water is closer and better than you think. When I say closer, I mean it's here today. It's not some future science fiction thing. It's already arrived. In fact, it's a play on words. When I say closer, I also mean proximity. The future of water is on your roof. Better than you think. When I say better, all those problems that we discussed, people desperate for water, people protesting in the streets in Peru and Ireland and elsewhere, water cops in California leaking underground pipes, water pipes, losing 30–40% of our water disappearing into the ground, contamination, all of that suddenly gets a lot better under this new scenario. Does anyone agree with this? How many of you think that, okay, well, maybe the future of water is closer and better than you think? Anybody? Whoa! Fantastic. Nearly unanimous. Well, there you have it. I think I'll end there. We'll have about 7 minutes for questions. I just want to leave you with this final word, that the stakes are high. Water is essential for everybody, every single day. It's hard to imagine a more important resource. It's hard to imagine a topic that applies across all of your degree programs and your majors and your future. It's critically important. But the prospects actually look pretty good. The future might be closer and better than you think. But how soon we realize that future, how soon we get to a truly sustainable water, depends on you. Thank you very much. Okay, Q&A. Yes, over here.
Actually, rainwater harvesting, but at a larger scale, is it feasible to release at a city scale where it might actually affect the hydrological cycle or water flow?
Sure. The question was, can you do rainwater harvesting at a larger scale? And are there any consequences of that? And the answer is yes. People are doing it at a very large scale. That's definitely occurring in many locations. It doesn't really affect the hydrology much. Rainwater harvesting, it doesn't really affect what's entering the water cycle. If you capture the rain, instead of letting it go run off to the ocean or go down into the aquifer, you use it for a while, and then you release it back into the environment, and then it goes back down and recharges the aquifer. The environmental implications actually look pretty good. Rainwater harvesting and gray water recycling, they slow down the rate of water use. So instead of running out to the ocean, it has a chance to recharge. Yes?
Is Water City just a West Coast operation now, or you need to come to this area?
She's asking if Water City is just a West Coast thing. You know, I have a track record of coming up with startups and then getting customers and revenue and handing them off to Silicon Valley executives, and I've handed this off to Silicon Valley executives. They're running with it. Currently, it's just our customers are just in California. Next question, in the back.
What is the pricing like for rainwater and black water systems? And also, what is done with the byproduct of black water systems?
Okay. Technical question on what happens to the waste. The waste for a black water recycling system can be treated just like regular sewage, regular solid waste from your house or from your any other larger facility. The price is still pretty high. It's like that $4,000 cell phone that's the size of a brick. Black water recycling systems are not particularly affordable. I showed you the San Francisco skyscraper, the new Salesforce tower with the 30,000 gallon a day unit. It's expensive. I don't have the exact numbers, though, on that. I have a better idea for gray water recycling because we've been recycling them. For rainwater harvesting, just assume, if you want to have above ground storage, assume 1 cent per gallon of storage. So if you have a 10,000 gallon storage capacity for your property, assume $10,000 cost for that. Double that if you're going to bury it underground.
Yes. Have there been ecological studies on capturing fog and the viability of ecosystems? So come to mind, Colombia has fog forests, and other places that depend on fog to be viable.
Yeah, it's a great question. The question was, if you're sucking water out of the sky, does that have adverse ecological or other impacts? And that's a great question. One of the first things I asked as well. So I talked to a lot of scientists about this, atmospheric scientists in particular, and they're like, it really is negligible. You can be sucking water out of the sky, fog and rain and other things, atmospheric water from thin air, and it's a negligible impact. because it's trillions and trillions of gallons. The metaphor they used with me, they said, Jeff, imagine you're in a boat in the ocean, and you reach out, you have a ladle, a scoop, or a cup, and you scoop some ocean water from the side of your boat, and you lift it up. Look where you scooped. Is there a hole there? No, it just filled up instantly by the ocean, and that's what's happening with the ocean in the sky. In the back.
I worked this summer at Google in Mountain View working on their Blackwater system for their new headquarters.
They're doing a Blackwater system at Google?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So their biggest hurdle was really the policy and getting everything permitted. So how do you see that playing into this?
Yeah, the question was, one of the hurdles is the regulatory side, the policies for this, and that came up before as well. So we're making progress on that. We are, on the regulatory side, we're where solar was 20 or 30 years ago, where the regulators are like, what? You know, do we want you doing this? And there's been a policy battle on solar, and we've been gaining ground over time. And it's the same thing with this. In San Francisco, they're extremely receptive to this and will help with the permits, like with the Salesforce Tower. But outside of San Francisco, for example, in Menlo Park, it hasn't quite spread that to that area yet. Yes?
Have you identified any other industries or products that fit this trend towards distribution to be beneficial?
Oh, the question was this decentralized, this devolution revolution that's one of the great movements of your time, whether it's movies or Uber and Lyft or Airbnb. Are there other areas where this might be happening to the benefit of society? I don't know. You've seen the ones in your pop quiz. You've seen it from telecommunications. You've seen it from solar. I'm sure there will be other examples. Maybe you guys can think of some other examples where this devolution revolution, this grand decentralization flattening trend will be of use. Yes?
When it comes to gray water recycling, how is the microplastic pollution of water and the synthetics in laundry, how is that accounted for when you're recycling?
Oh, great question. Yeah, the question was, how about when you're recycling gray water, what happens to the stuff you get out of that? And we dispose of that properly. But there are microplastics that get through the filtration system, just that they get through water treatment systems at this point. So that's a scale. That's something we need to work on still for the gray water recycling. Yes?
I just want to make sure I understand the business model. So
yeah.
All of the upfront costs are covered by the company, and then they own the product, whether it's electricity or water,
yeah.
which they then sell back to you at a lower
Yes.
cost. But what is the percentage going towards paying back technically what you owe the company? You know what I mean? What is it? You're paying 50/50, and then after that 10-year payback period, now you're just paying for the water that they provide?
Yeah, the question was about the business model, just clarifying how that works. Right now at my house in California, Solar City has the panels on my roof. We're producing electricity. They own those panels, and we are not paying for them at all. My wife and kids and dog and I, we are just paying electricity to the solar company based on what we use. And so we're not paying for those panels at all. Water City's customer right now, today, California, I'm thinking of a 300-room conference center at Silomar. They're going to use thousands of gallons of water today with doing laundry and tablecloths and stuff. We're going to clean it up for them overnight. We're going to sell it back to them the next morning for much less than what they pay the water utility. They're not paying for that recycling system at all. I think we got time for one more question. Last question, right over here, please. Yeah.
How do you avoid such decentralized systems from becoming monopolistic in the future, especially when you try to scale them up?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, the question was, how do you avoid the decentralized systems from becoming monopolies unto themselves? And it's too early to say, but I'm not seeing monopolistic behavior among solar yet, or with the Uber and Lyft. It could be like Uber and Lyft and Airbnb, the ones that provide the clearinghouse and the online platform could become monopolies. But with this one, with water, I just don't see that happening. It's probably a little more like solar companies, probably a little more like cell phones, potentially. All right.
Jeff, thank you so much. I have a couple of announcements before we break up, and then I will allow you to applause. The first one is just a reminder to the students to be sure to sign the form before you leave. You get credit for being here. And Jeff and Terry Tucker are going to move over to Mandeville's from here and engage in some conversation. And anyone who would like to join them for a cup of coffee or tea, you're extremely welcome to go to Mandeville's and carry on a conversation with the guys. And thank you all for being here. Now we'll go back to Jeff.
Thank you.